what I wanted to talk about is about the European Convention, the sense of the Convention, why it has been put into force, what it means, and how it can be used today. And the idea is giving European audiovisual productions an instrument that can enable them to produce with different countries, even when there is no treaty between the countries. Now, I saw that you were a bit puzzled maybe yesterday when Karsten talked about the national certificate. Okay, it's like the idea of a film having a passport, no? You know that if a kid is born from two parents of different nationalities, the different countries from where the parents come have regulations and laws that allow the children to take the nationality of one or the other, or both. Ideally, the kids can have both nationalities, which is the best situation. And that is what happens also with audiovisual works, which are co-produced by different countries when there are treaties that regulate the laws between them. So each country has signed treaties with other countries, and we normally find them on the national film centers or Ministry of Culture or whatever agency it is that oversees to the cinema in those countries. For example, that Italy has treaties with, 32 countries. Your countries may have treaties with other countries or may not, because now they have not been signed or there are no agreements yet. The Council of Europe, always in the mission of having European works circulate, of favouring co-productions, cooperation between different countries, has come up with this legal instrument that allows us to give the citizenship to the audiovisual works, even when there is no treaty between the country. And what does having the citizenship mean? What advantages does that bring? It means that you get all the advantages of your national benefits, even if you are not national of that country. So an audiovisual work that is co-produced, 80% France and 20% Ukraine. It can be produced under a bilateral treaty, if there is a treaty between the two sides, bilateral. Or if there is no treaty, it can be produced under the European Convention, we say. In that case, France is 80%, Ukraine is 20%. With the European Convention, this is possible. Both countries, the film has the nationality in both countries. That means that it is Ukrainian for Ukraine, it is a French film for France, and that means that you can apply for national funds. Otherwise, you cannot. A French film could not apply for Ukrainian funds, obviously. And a Ukrainian producer can't go to France and say, I want French funding on my film, If it is a French film for France and a Ukrainian film for Ukraine, you can, for your 20% of belonging of the film, of property of the film, you can apply for Ukrainian funds. So that's the concept within the European Convention. It is very much used in situations where there are no treaties. It's used in situations where you have more than two partners, because, for example, Eurimage covers the gap financing when you have two partners. And what happens when you have more than two, when they come from other countries? They're all regulated by the European Convention. But this, this is the link. As you see, it has been created in 1992, and there are countries that are still signing in. So of all the countries of the European of the Council of Europe that can participate in this under this cinematographic co-production treaty, some are now are still signing, ratifying. You have to check if your country has ratified its signature, if it's now possible for you to access the European Co-Production Treaty. So the aim of the convention, to promote the development of European cinematographic co-production, as we said. It shall govern the relation between the parties, shall apply to co-productions involving at least 3 co-producers established in 3 different parties, and to co-productions involving at least 3 co-producers established in 3 different parties and 1 or more co-producers not established in the parties. And it applies, as you see, number 4, in the absence of any agreement governing bilateral co-production relations. So if there are two countries that do not have a treaty between them, this convention applies. So then you have definitions, you have the rules applicable, you see assimilation to national films. That means that under the European Convention, every film will have the nationality of the country involved, and it will be able to apply to the national funds as a national film would. So you have here all the conditions for obtaining the co-production status, which has to be agreed by the ministries. If you do a Ukrainian-French co-production, the French ministry will be informed, because each one of you has to inform the respective ministries, and they will talk. And then you will be granted the co-production status once it is approved, because it has to be liable now to approval on behalf of the authorities. And then it regulates the contributions from each co-producer, now saying that it cannot go under 10%, the minimum, the rights of the co-producers, and technical and artistical participation for a real co-production under technical and artistical contribution from the different parties involved. As a general thing, this gives you an idea of what it is. Maybe you should, though, know that there is a system of points that is quite important to know, because when you have non-European contributions, cinematographic work qualifies as European and then can be regulated under the European Convention when you sum up to a certain number of points. A work can be qualified as European even if it has an American director, for example, or an Indian director. But you have the key elements of the creative group, you have the performing group, you have now technical craft group, cameraman, sound recordist, and you need to have at least 15 of these to be qualified as a European work.
For definition of co-production, they will use this criteria,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
And they will use this criteria for all the paperwork. So this is not just we say that we're co-producing it, we have agreements between us as co-producers.
If you want to have the national status in order to apply to your national authorities for the financing, you need to do it under the co-production treaty, if there are no bilateral treaties.
What about language? Because I know to have our national certificate, it must be Ukrainian, but as I know there are some stories of co-production, there was different language, so how do I avoid this?
That really depends on the national situations, because I know that in Italy, for example, they used to request Italian as a language, and then they had to, because the Europeans were really insisting, as long as it is the language of one of the co-producers. So if it's a film shot between Italy and France, for example, it can be French or it can be Italian, but they have to decide. It's not a co-production certificate, it's the national certificate that you get from your country. It's the citizenship of the film. Now they give you national certificate, and that is what you need. But to have that, you have to comply the rules of the co-production. It's now very, very simple on one side. On the other side, it is subject to negotiation, as many things are, of course.